Ryan and I found something authentic. That was how my wife ended our 13-year marriage. Nicole said it during our anniversary dinner while wearing the bracelet I had given her that morning and sitting across from the man whose name still appeared beside hers on the mortgage. She did not cry. She folded her napkin, placed it beside her plate, and explained that her wellness coach had helped her realize our marriage was built on safety instead of love. Nicole said she still cared about me. She hoped we could separate with dignity and avoid making money the center of an emotional transition. For several months, she wanted the mortgage, household accounts, and existing expenses to continue as they always had. She also wanted time before selling the house, because she and Ryan were preparing to launch something meaningful together. In other words, my wife wanted to leave the marriage without leaving the financial structure that made her new life possible. His name was Ryan Harper. I already knew the name. Ryan was her wellness coach. A man who posted videos about emotional honesty, conscious breathing, and escaping relationships that no longer served your highest self. Apparently, our 13-year marriage had become one of those relationships. What Nicole did not know was that his company had appeared 3 times on our joint bank statement. True North renewal. There were wellness retreats charged to a card in my name, hotel stays she had called business trips, and a transfer she had never mentioned. Nicole reached across the table and touched my wrist, as if she were comforting me. I looked at the woman I had trusted for 13 years, then I smiled. "You're right," I said. "We should stop living dishonestly." Nicole thought I had accepted losing her. What I had accepted was that every dollar supporting her new life needed to be identified before it disappeared. We had built our life deliberately. Our first apartment sat above a bakery, whose mixers started before dawn. I proofread Nicole's presentations while she traveled, and she tested me for a risk management certification until we could afford a down payment and a future that felt chosen rather than accidental. I worked in financial, operations, and risk controls. Nicole rose through strategic partnerships at Luma Wellbeing Group, where she could recommend vendors and open doors to high-value clients. We both understood what an undisclosed conflict could do to a company. That would matter later. On our 10th anniversary, Nicole wrote me a letter that began, "You are the safest place I know." She remembered the apartment above the bakery and the years we had helped each other build careers. I framed it in my study. 3 years later, she sat across from me and said safety was not love. I asked when she met Ryan. 4 months ago at the Luma Leadership Retreat, Ryan led a session on authentic alignment, then became her private coach. Thursday sessions stretched past midnight. Weekend retreats followed. Nicole said Luma was evaluating True North as a vendor and would reimburse the expenses, so she used my card for the travel points. I did not check whether the reimbursements arrived. The changes first appeared in her vocabulary. Tired became energetically misaligned. Questions became control. When I asked whether private coaching and vendor work should be separated, she said I ought to trust her professional judgment. Our Sunday dinners became shorter. Nicole kept her phone face down beside her plate and smiled at messages she said came from the leadership team. During our summer trip, she spent each morning on video calls with Ryan because the launch strategy could not wait. One Thursday, she came home after midnight smelling of cedar smoke from a retreat property outside the city. She blamed a storm. I offered to collect her the next time, and she said my presence would change the energy of the space. I stood in our kitchen wondering how a ride from her husband had become a threat to a wellness seminar. The week before our anniversary, I found a hotel charge in another city. Nicole said Luma had moved a planning meeting, then accused me of monitoring her. I apologized before she had to explain anything. After her confession, that apology stayed with me. She had taught me to treat noticing as wrongdoing. At the anniversary dinner, she described Ryan's version of our marriage. I did not truly see her. I loved who she had been, not who she was becoming. Our routines had become a cage. Ryan made her feel alive. Did he tell you to leave me? He never tells me what to do. He gives me permission to hear myself. And what did you hear? That I have spent years choosing safety over truth. I thought of the framed letter in my study. What happens now? I asked. Nicole had prepared the answer. She wanted a period of transition. She would use the guest room while we discussed the house. She hoped we could keep household expenses unchanged for several months. Selling immediately would create unnecessary pressure, especially while True North prepared a major launch. You're involved in the launch? Ryan wants me beside him. This is not only personal. We are building something meaningful. Together. She smiled. Yes. On paper, her smile thinned. Why are you turning this into an interrogation? You brought another man into our anniversary dinner. I am asking where he fits. She said ownership documents were still being finalized. Ryan intended her to become a partner in a retreat property called True North Renewal House. The project needed initial capital, but investors were interested. How much have you invested? That is something we can discuss when emotions are not so high. My voice had not risen. Nicole continued, as if she were presenting terms. She believed the house should eventually be sold. We would divide the equity fairly. Until then, our existing accounts could continue covering the mortgage, utilities, insurance, and reasonable transition expenses. Does Ryan have a home? He rents because he values flexibility. Does his company make a profit? Daniel, this is exactly what I mean. You reduce everything to risk. Risk is what remains after the inspirational language leaves. She leaned back. I am not asking your permission to be happy. No, you were asking me to finance it. For the first time that evening, her calm expression broke. She said I was punishing her before we had even discussed a separation. I reminded her she had been discussing it with Ryan for 4 months. Dessert arrived between us. The waiter set down a chocolate cake with a candle and wished us many more years. Neither of us corrected him. Nicole ate 2 bites. I could not touch mine. On the drive home, she asked whether I wanted music. The question was so ordinary that I almost laughed. 13 years of marriage sat between us while the navigation system directed us toward the same address, at a red light. Nicole said she hoped I would eventually understand that honesty was an act of respect. Honesty would have been telling me before the first hotel room, I said. She turned toward the window and did not speak again. At home, Nicole took a pillow to the guest room. I went into my study and looked at her anniversary letter. You are the safest place I know. I did not remove it from the frame. I sat beneath it until after midnight. Anger arrived in practical disguises. Cancel every card. Move every dollar. Call Nicole's employer. Send Ryan's videos to our friends beside photographs of the hotel statements. Each action promised 10 minutes of relief and months of consequences. I opened Nicole's laptop once, then closed it without entering the password I knew she often used. The device belonged to her and might contain protected company information. Whatever truth lived inside it would need to come through lawful discovery, not through a husband's searching in the dark. I drafted a message to Ryan. You have no idea what you started. I deleted it. He knew exactly what he had started. Warning him would only teach him which records to explain. Instead, I wrote down what Nicole had said at dinner while the wording was fresh. 4 months. True North. Retreat investment. Sell the house. Keep expenses unchanged. I noted the time, restaurant, and the name of the card used for dinner. The list looked cold. My hands did not feel cold. For 13 years, our finances had been a shared language. A transfer meant a roof repair, a trip, a plan we had discussed at the kitchen table. Writing Nicole's words beside True North charges felt like discovering that the same language had been used to hold a second conversation behind my back. At 2 in the morning, I downloaded the previous 12 months of bank and credit card statements. I made copies without altering any account. True North appeared more often than I remembered. Charges included retreat lodging, coaching packages, video production, advertising, equipment rental, and hotel stays in cities where Nicole said she had attended Luma meetings. The largest item was a transfer of $25,000 from our joint savings account to True North Renewal. Nicole had labeled it professional development. At 7:30, she entered the kitchen dressed for work. She seemed surprised to find me making coffee. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Enough. I hope you understand I did not confess to hurt you." "Why did you confess?" "Because Ryan and I are done hiding. Then we should make everything authentic." She heard acceptance again. I waited until she left before calling Marissa Cole. Marissa practiced family law and had been recommended by a colleague whose divorce remained private despite a complicated business partnership. Her assistant found space for me that afternoon. I brought the statements, the mortgage documents, the card agreements, and a copy of Nicole's anniversary letter because I no longer knew which details would matter. Marissa read the first 3 pages and asked one question. "Do you want to punish your wife? Or do you want to protect yourself?" "Both. Only one of those belongs in my office." The answer should have embarrassed me. It did not. I wanted Nicole to feel the shock she had delivered so calmly over dessert. I wanted Ryan to discover that my silence was not permission. Marissa let me sit with that for a moment before turning the statements back toward me. She made the boundaries simple. I could protect future earnings, revoke Nicole's access to a card issued solely in my name, and withhold consent from any loan against our house. I could not empty joint accounts, hide assets, or stop essential household payments. "Do not punish her, Daniel," Marissa said. "Document her. Consequences survive longer than anger." She also warned me not to call every expense theft. The useful questions were when the money moved, where it went, and what records supported the purpose. "If you exaggerate one charge," Marissa said, "her lawyer will use it to question the rest." She slid a legal pad across the desk and asked me to separate what I knew from what I suspected. The first list was shorter than the second. Seeing the difference did not make me less angry, but it showed me where anger could not be allowed to write the facts. I told her about the hotel rooms and retreats. "Then let Priya trace them. You do not need to decide their meaning today." Marissa asked whether I felt safe returning home. I said yes. "Then keep communication brief. Do not manufacture a scene. If the situation changes, call me." She referred me to Priya Shah, a forensic accountant. That evening, Nicole asked whether I had considered the graceful separation she proposed. I told her I was considering everything. She went upstairs to call Ryan. She still mistook my silence for surrender. Priya Shah began with a rule I understood immediately. "An affair leaves messages," she said. "A financed affair leaves a ledger." We met in Marissa's conference room 2 days after the anniversary. I gave Priya statements from every account I could lawfully access, tax returns, credit card records, mortgage documents, and the household budget Nicole and I had updated 6 months earlier. Over the next 10 days, Priya reconstructed the pattern without entering Nicole's private accounts. The $25,000 transfer was only the largest visible payment. Smaller transfers, hotel folios, advertising deposits, equipment invoices, catering bills, and payments routed through a digital platform brought the supported total to $94,000, which she matched statement dates to invoices, reimbursement records, reservation names, and delivery addresses. When a payment platform showed only a processor code, she waited for the underlying record. When a hotel charge included both Luma work and an extra night with Ryan, she split the supported business portion from the disputed expense instead of assigning the whole bill to one story. $25,000 had gone directly from joint savings to True North. Nearly 19,000 covered retreats and travel, 14,000 paid advertising and launch deposits, 11,000 purchased studio and video equipment, coaching, catering, transportation, and hotel extensions made up the rest. The documents connected each category to something physical. Meditation chairs had been delivered to a true North storage unit. Camera equipment went to Ryan's studio. A hotel folio from Nicole's supposed leadership summit showed a second room under Ryan's name. Some charges clearly named True North or Ryan. Others mixed Loomis travel with retreats, upgraded flights, restaurants, or hotel extensions. Priya separated what the records proved from what anger only suggested, and refused to force uncertain expenses into the final number. Her preliminary total changed more than once. Each time a legitimate reimbursement appeared, she lowered it. Each time an invoice tied household money to Ryan's launch, she raised it again. By the 10th day, $94,000 was not the most dramatic number we could present. It was the number that survived every correction. The strongest number is not always the largest number, she said. It is the one every record supports. The transfers had grown gradually. The first was $1,500 for coaching. The next was $3,000 for a leadership intensive. By the time Nicole moved $25,000, enough smaller True North charges had appeared to make the payment look familiar. Nothing had vanished in one reckless night. It had left in amounts designed to become normal. I compared the transfers with plans Nicole and I had postponed. We had delayed replacing the roof because contractor prices were high. We had reduced a planned anniversary trip to preserve savings. Nicole had agreed to both decisions while sending money toward Ryan's launch. The comparison hurt more than the hotel rooms. She had not only spent joint money, she had continued asking me to practice restraint for a future she was quietly financing without me. Priya saw me staring at the old budget. Do not turn this into a list of everything $94,000 could have bought, she said. The report needs what happened, not every life that might have happened instead. I closed the budget and returned to the transactions. Is all of it marital waste? I asked. That is for Marissa to argue and the court to decide. My job is to identify the source, purpose, and benefit. I pointed to the hotel charges she had left unresolved. We test them against reimbursements, calendars, and invoices, she said. Anger is not a transaction code. Marissa filed the divorce petition without allegations designed for headlines. It stated that the marriage had broken down and requested preservation of marital assets, financial discovery, and temporary orders governing expenses. My future salary moved into a new account. Joint funds remained available for the mortgage and ordinary bills. I revoked Nicole's access to the card issued solely in my name, and the bank confirmed that no loan against our house could close without my consent. Nicole discovered the card change at a hotel 3 days later. She called me while I was reviewing expense reports at work. My card was declined. The card in my name was closed. You knew I was using it for the launch. I knew you said Luma would reimburse business expenses. This is financial retaliation. Your cards still work. The joint account is intact. Household bills are being paid. Ryan has vendors waiting. The marriage may be joint. Your boyfriend's business is not. She lowered her voice. You are trying to humiliate me. No one at the hotel knows why the card closed. Pay with your own. There was a pause. Ryan's accounts are temporarily committed to the launch. That was the first time Nicole admitted he could not cover a hotel room. She used a card in her own name. When she returned, the divorce papers were waiting with instructions from Marissa. Nicole carried them into my study and placed them on top of the framed anniversary letter. You filed without discussing this with me. You discussed the end of our marriage for 4 months. I wanted us to handle it consciously. My attorney calls it financial disclosure. Nicole paced beside the desk. She said Ryan believed adversarial divorce trapped people in old patterns. He had recommended a collaborative coach who could help us release the marriage without blame. Is the coach employed by True North? That is irrelevant. Then the answer is yes. She accused me of reducing emotional truth to money. I asked whether emotional truth had paid for the $25,000 transfer. Nicole stopped pacing. That was an investment in a business I am joining. What percentage do you own? The structure is being finalized. Did you sign a subscription agreement? Ryan and I do not build our relationship around suspicion. A business agreement is not suspicion. She left the room carrying the divorce petition, but not the letter. Financial discovery produced more. Nicole disclosed an unsigned term sheet for True North Renewal House. It described a boutique retreat center offering coaching, executive wellness programs, and private residential experiences. The projected capital included a contribution from Nicole and a proposed home equity line secured by our house. Her name appeared under guarantors. It did not appear under owners. True North Renewal remained 100% owned by Ryan Harper. The term sheet allowed Ryan to change the project location, admit new investors, and use contributions for development and operating expenses. Nicole's personal guarantee would remain even if the project never opened. Did she sign this? I asked. Not the copy produced, Marissa said. But Ryan's lender requested preliminary verification of the house equity. The lender had received a valuation, mortgage balance, and a draft letter suggesting both spouses supported the investment. I had never seen the letter. My signature was not on it, but the wording implied consent was expected. Marissa sent written notice that I did not authorize any lien, guarantee, or use of the property for True North. The lender acknowledged that the transaction could not proceed without me. Nicole confronted me the same evening. You contacted our lender behind my back. Ryan's project contacted a lender using information about our house. It was preliminary. So is my refusal, except mine is final. You are sabotaging my future because I chose someone else. I am declining to secure his company with my home. Our home, exactly. It needs both signatures. She said, the retreat would generate enough income to repay the line within 2 years. I asked for audited projections. She called the question hostile. Ryan joined the conversation by speakerphone without being invited. His voice was calm and low. Daniel, I understand that fear makes people reach for control. How much money have you invested personally? True North is not built on possession. That was not the question. I never told Nicole to leave you. I only gave her permission to hear herself. You gave her your invoice immediately afterward. Nicole ended the call. At the temporary financial hearing 2 weeks later, Nicole asked for another $40,000 from joint savings for the True North launch. Marissa produced the ownership filing and unsigned term sheet. The company belonged entirely to Ryan. Nicole had no voting rights, no issued equity, and no protection if the retreat failed. The judge did not decide whether Ryan had manipulated her or whether the retreat would succeed. The question was whether disputed marital money should be committed to a company controlled by Nicole's romantic partner while our divorce was pending. The request was denied. Nicole remained free to invest her own future income. She simply could not invest mine. Neither of us could make unusual transfers or place new debt against the house while the divorce was pending. Outside the courtroom, Nicole accused me of making her look financially incompetent. Your own term sheet gave Ryan the company and gave you the guarantee, I said. That was temporary. Then ask him to issue your ownership before asking me for money. She said I knew nothing about building a mission-driven company. Ryan had contributed the brand, curriculum, network, and intellectual property. Her capital was only one form of value. Which form is he putting at risk? I asked. Nicole walked away before answering. Priya continued reconciling the $94,000. Luma reimbursements covered only a small portion. Several charges Nicole had described as company travel were never submitted to Luma. Others had been submitted and rejected because the vendor documentation was incomplete. Then Priya found payments flowing in the opposite direction. Luma Wellbeing Group had paid True North for executive coaching services. Nicole had sponsored Ryan's addition to the vendor system. She had approved or recommended invoices while maintaining an undisclosed intimate relationship with him. The payments from Luma were separate from the money Nicole spent personally, but they explained why Ryan had encouraged her to blur romance and business. She had not only funded him, she had opened a door to wealthy clients. Marissa warned me not to contact Nicole's employer. The records will be addressed through discovery and appropriate counsel, she said. You are divorcing your wife. You are not running an employment investigation. We preserved the vendor documents and requested complete disclosures at home. Nicole began moving clothes into rented storage. She continued sleeping in the guest room because no temporary exclusive possession order had been requested. We spoke only about bills, schedules, and legal logistics. Living together during litigation made every room feel assigned. Nicole used the kitchen before 7. I waited until she left. She took calls in the guest room with a white noise machine running outside the door. I worked in the study beneath the framed anniversary letter. Our friends began choosing how much they wanted to know. I told no one about the hotel records or True North transfers. Nicole told several people she had chosen an authentic relationship and that I was posing through financial control. One friend asked why I had cancelled her card. I cancelled my card, I said. She has her own. The distinction sounded small. It was the difference between what had happened and the story spreading around it. One night, I found her standing in my study, reading the anniversary letter. Do you remember writing it? I asked. Of course. You called me the safest place you knew. I meant it then. And now, safety is a cage. People grow. She returned the letter to the desk. Ryan says you use stability to avoid being truly known. Ryan knows my credit limit better than he knows me. She walked out. The following morning, Priya showed me the full lender package. The house was not merely an idea Nicole and Ryan had discussed. True North had already presented it as expected collateral in materials used to support the launch financing. He wasn't only hoping she would invest, Priya said. He was already building your house into the deal. Ryan Harper's public image was easier to find than his money. True North's website showed him standing barefoot near oceans, mountains, and expensive windows. He described himself as a transformational wellness strategist who helped high-performing people leave inherited fear behind. The business filings were less poetic. True North Renewal had changed addresses 4 times in 3 years. Its current address belonged to a monthly office suite. Ryan rented his apartment. The company carried debt, several equipment liens, and no real estate suitable for a retreat center. Nothing about that was illegal. Small companies struggle. Founders rent. Ambition often appears on a website before it appears in a bank account. What mattered was how Ryan filled the gap. Priya found a prior civil lawsuit through a public court index. The plaintiff was Mara Ellis, former owner of a yoga studio. The case involved a disputed investment in an earlier Ryan venture called Open Horizon Retreats. The lawsuit had settled without a judgment. Public filings revealed only that Mara alleged breach of contract and misrepresentation. Marissa contacted the attorney listed on the old case and asked whether Mara would be willing to speak through counsel. Mara agreed. She met us in Marissa's office carrying a thin folder and no interest in becoming my revenge witness. If you want someone to call your wife stupid, find someone else, she said. I want to understand how he works. Then start by accepting that he is very good at making intelligent people explain away their own judgment. Mara had met Ryan 5 years earlier while running a successful yoga studio and caring for a sick parent. She was exhausted. He told her she had mistaken responsibility for identity. Private coaching became late-night messages, then a relationship. 3 months later, Mara left her husband and invested $120,000 in Ryan's retreat concept. It never opened. When she asked for accounting records, Ryan said her focus on money proved she was returning to fear. Her civil case later traced part of the investment to Ryan's rent, personal travel, and promotion for another program. She recovered only a portion in settlement. "Did you recover anything?" I asked. "Some money in settlement. Not the marriage, not the studio." Mara opened her folder. It contained payment records, investment documents, and business messages her former attorney had cleared for disclosure. One message read, "You have mistaken safety for love." Another said, "Your guilt belongs to the version of you that was trained to stay small." A third said, "We did not choose this connection. We recognized it." I had seen the same phrases in excerpts Nicole included with her discovery responses. Her attorney had produced them to support the claim that the relationship and True North investment were connected to a genuine future partnership. Mara watched my face. "Ryan does not fall in love with married women," she said. "He falls in love with what they can move without their husbands noticing." Mara allowed Marissa to use only the materials her settlement permitted. The next connection came to us. True North published launch materials naming Nicole as a strategic visionary behind True North Renewal House. The announcements circulated through professional social networks and Luma client channels. 3 days later, a private wealth advisor named Claire Donnelly contacted Luma after seeing the company and several clients referenced in the launch materials. Luma's counsel was already reviewing True North's vendor records. So her documents eventually reached Marissa. Ryan had coached Claire for 6 weeks, invited her to the launch as a potential founding investor, and told her their connection was becoming personal. "Ryan told me Nicole was a former client who helped with introductions," she said during a video meeting. "He said there was nothing romantic between them." She produced messages voluntarily. Ryan had told Claire she confused safety with love. He said guilt belonged to a smaller version of her. He wrote that they had not chosen their connection, only recognized it. The punctuation matched Nicole's messages. Ryan was not merely repeating a philosophy in public posts. He was sending the same private progression to multiple women while discussing investment. Claire had not transferred money. Ryan had sent her a draft participation agreement for a second retreat property and asked whether she could introduce clients who valued discreet transformation. The agreement was almost identical to Nicole's term sheet. Ryan retained all ownership. Claire would provide capital and a personal guarantee. Priya compared document metadata and public filings. The two agreements had been created from the same template within 3 weeks of each other. The project names differed, but both referred to the same proposed property, estimated renovation budget, and launch quarter. Ryan was not simply developing two unrelated opportunities. He was using the same property to invite capital from women who each believed she occupied a unique role. Claire's messages also showed that Ryan had asked about the structure of her client relationships and whether any investors preferred private placements. He had not received a list from her. The request still matched the way he had used Nicole's access to Luma clients. "Does Nicole know about me?" Claire asked. "I do not know," I said. "Do you plan to tell her?" Marissa answered. "Not through private confrontation. If you want to withdraw from the launch or communicate with Ryan, that is your decision. We will not direct you." Claire chose to attend. She wanted to see whether Ryan presented Nicole as his partner while asking Claire to invest in the same future. The professional side of Nicole's conduct developed separately. Discovery produced Luma vendor records because Nicole had claimed some True North expenses were legitimate business development. Her own position made the documents relevant. True North entered Luma's vendor system 3 months after Nicole began coaching with Ryan. The conflict disclosure stated that Nicole had no personal or financial relationship with the vendor. That answer was false. Nicole had recommended the contract, forwarded Ryan's pricing, and approved a pilot program for executive clients. She also sent a spreadsheet containing names, contact information, service preferences, and scheduling details for high-value clients. The spreadsheet was marked internal. True North used portions of the list to invite people to its launch. Several invoices did not match the services documented. One billed Luma for a group coaching session on a weekend when Nicole and Ryan were staying at a retreat hotel. Another charged for client assessments that lacked attendance records. Priya identified the inconsistencies and provided them to Marissa without claiming more than the records showed. Marissa notified Nicole's counsel that responsive company records raised potential confidentiality and conflict issues. Under the protective process governing discovery, Luma's legal department received the materials relevant to its own information. Whatever happened at Luma would have to come from its own records, not from a call I made. Luma opened its own compliance review. Simon Blake, a compliance officer, interviewed Nicole and temporarily suspended her authority over vendors and client referrals. True North's pilot contract was placed on hold pending review. Simon's review focused on when Nicole's personal relationship began, when she sponsored True North as a vendor, and when she approved payments or transmitted client information. Nicole initially said the relationship became romantic only after the pilot contract was approved. Calendar records, hotel dates, and coaching messages placed personal contact earlier. She argued that emotional intimacy did not create a reportable conflict until the relationship became physical. Luma's policy required disclosure of any personal or financial relationship that could affect vendor judgment. It did not wait for Nicole to choose a label. The client spreadsheet created a separate issue. Nicole said Ryan needed it to coordinate approved sessions. The pilot agreement authorized contact with enrolled participants, not unrestricted use of Luma's premium client directory for outside marketing. Simon did not decide the case during the interview. He restricted Nicole's access while information security reviewed the transfer and finance reconciled every True North invoice. Nicole came home furious. "You sent my employer private details about my relationship. My lawyer produced business records through the discovery process. You knew what Luma would do. I did not sign your conflict disclosure. Ryan was a legitimate vendor before our relationship changed. The dates will answer that. You are trying to destroy my career because I left you. Your husband did not approve the vendor contract." "You did." She said the client list had been used only for Luma-approved invitations. I asked whether Luma had approved sending it to True North. She did not answer. Ryan arrived 20 minutes later. It was the first time he entered our home while I was there. He wore a linen jacket and the peaceful expression from his videos. He did not apologize for sleeping with my wife. He asked whether we could lower the emotional temperature. "Nicole is experiencing institutional retaliation because you chose a hostile legal process," he said. "Luma is reviewing her vendor decisions." Language like reviewing creates a story of wrongdoing before anyone has listened to her truth. "Did you receive the client spreadsheet?" True North received materials for the pilot program. "Did you use those names for your launch?" The launch serves the same wellness community. He could turn any direct question into fog. Nicole stood beside him, waiting for me to become the angry husband he had described. I asked Ryan one business question. "What percentage of True North does Nicole own?" "We do not define partnership only through equity." "What percentage?" "Ownership will evolve after the launch." Nicole looked at him. "You said the documents were nearly finished." "They are. Daniel is using legal structures to create fear around something we understand emotionally. The retreat financing lists her only as a guarantor, I said. That is a temporary structure. Nicole's face changed, but only for a moment. Ryan touched her shoulder. Do not let his fear pull you back into the old pattern. She followed him out. The launch dinner remained scheduled for the following Friday at a boutique hotel. Ryan needed it to attract investors after the home equity funding stalled. Nicole believed the event would restore Luma's confidence and prove True North had independent value. Simon informed True North that Luma's contract would remain suspended. Nicole's employment review continued. With no final finding yet made, Ryan adjusted the launch materials. He removed Luma's logo but kept several Luma clients on the invitation list. Nicole used part of her separate salary to cover the hotel deposit after the court denied access to additional joint savings. Ryan contributed the brand and promised investor commitments would reimburse her after the event. When Nicole's attorney requested proof of those commitments, True North produced letters describing investor interest but no binding subscriptions. Ryan said serious investors avoided rigid commitments before experiencing the launch vision. The closer the event came, the more every missing document became evidence of courage. I considered sending Nicole the messages before the launch. Marissa asked what I expected the warning to accomplish. Maybe she cancels the event. Or Ryan tells her Mara is vindictive, Claire is confused, and you manufactured the timing. Nicole had already interpreted bank records, ownership documents, and a court order through Ryan's language. Another private warning would become another private argument. I decided not to hide the evidence, but I also stopped trying to make her accept it before she was willing to look. Marissa received a formal invitation from True North's lawyer. Ryan wanted the disputed investment and proposed settlement addressed at the hotel before the public presentation. If I agreed to release my objection to the home equity line and treat Nicole's transfers as her share of marital assets, the launch could proceed with financing credibility. Marissa advised me to attend the private pre-event meeting and sign nothing. I told myself I was attending to protect the house and answer the financing proposal. That was true. It was not the whole truth. A part of me wanted Nicole to hear Ryan answer the questions he had spent 4 months teaching her not to ask. Mara purchased a ticket to the public launch. Claire kept her investor invitation. Simon had been invited when True North still expected Luma's support. After the contract was suspended, Luma asked him to attend only because the revised launch materials continued implying an active strategic relationship. Ryan had spent months keeping every woman, investor, client, and lender inside a separate version of the truth. The launch was the first room where those versions were about to meet. The night before the event, Mara placed Nicole's message beside her own on Marissa's conference table. The women's names were different. Every other word was identical. The True North launch occupied the hotel's glass ballroom, a room designed to make every idea look funded. White candles lined the tables. A projection screen displayed photographs of forests, oceans, and the estate Ryan hoped to convert into a retreat center. Staff wore cream-colored badges printed with words like courage, alignment, and renewal. I arrived with Marissa 40 minutes before the presentation. Nicole stood near the stage in a dark green dress. For 13 years, I had known the small adjustments she made when nervous. The way she pressed her thumbnail against the side of her finger. The way she checked a doorway twice while pretending to admire the room. She was doing both. The bracelet I had given her on our anniversary was gone. In its place was a thin gold cuff from the True North launch photographs. I had imagined this room would make me feel powerful. Instead, watching her rehearse Ryan's language for strangers made the end of our marriage feel less abstract and more final. Ryan greeted us with open hands. "Thank you for choosing dialogue," he said. "We chose the meeting listed in your lawyer's invitation," Marissa replied. "The private discussion took place in a conference room behind the ballroom. Ryan's business attorney joined by video. Nicole's divorce attorney sat beside her. On the table were the retreat term sheet, proposed marital settlement language, and a letter asking me to acknowledge the planned home equity financing. Marissa placed the temporary financial order beside it. Daniel cannot pledge the house outside the order, and he does not consent. Ryan looked at me. Is that a permanent position or an emotional response? Permanent. Nicole leaned forward. My share of the equity belongs to me. Your eventual share will be determined in the divorce, Marissa said. The jointly owned house cannot secure this company tonight. Nicole's attorney acknowledged that my claim over the $94,000 remained unresolved. Until the divorce court determined how those transfers would be treated, they could not simply be converted into Nicole's separate contribution to True North through the launch documents. Ryan's attorney asked whether a smaller contribution could be recognized in exchange for True North equity. Show us the equity, I said. He displayed the current ownership document. Ryan owned 100%. Nicole's name appeared only in a draft advisory role and on the proposed personal guarantee. She turned to him. Where is the amended operating agreement? It is being finalized after capital closes. You said I was already a partner. You are, in every way that matters. Marissa closed her folder. The way that matters to a lender is missing. The meeting ended without agreement. Ryan could have postponed the launch. Instead, he walked into the ballroom and told the event coordinator to begin on time. He believed confidence could carry him across documents that had stopped cooperating. Guests included prospective investors, wellness professionals, several Luma clients, and friends Nicole and I had known for years. Mara sat near the back. Claire occupied a reserved investor table. Simon stood beside another Luma representative, holding a sealed folder. Nicole saw Mara but did not recognize her. Ryan began with a breathing exercise. Then, he told the audience True North was founded on the courage to leave behind lives that were no longer honest. He spoke about people trapped by comfort, guilt, and inherited expectations. Nicole joined him on stage. This project exists because two people chose truth over fear, he said. The phrase two people changed Claire's expression. Ryan introduced Nicole as the strategic heart of True North Renewal House. He did not call her an owner. The presentation moved to projected revenue, membership programs, and investor participation. A slide listed Luma Wellbeing Group among strategic pathways without displaying its logo. Simon raised his hand. Before investors rely on that statement, Luma needs to clarify its position. Ryan smiled. We can address individual partnership questions after the vision is complete. The vendor contract with True North is suspended. Luma has not approved use of its client list for this event, and no current Luma relationship should be represented as launch support. The room changed. People stopped watching the screen and began watching Nicole. She stepped toward the microphone. This is an internal review arising from a personal dispute. It will be resolved. Simon's answer was careful. The issue is not whom Nicole loved, Simon said. It is whether she paid an undisclosed personal partner, approved his company as a vendor, and allowed client information to be used beyond the pilot. Luma is still reviewing the full record. Ryan moved quickly to the next slide. Claire stood. You told me Nicole was a former client. He looked at her for too long. Claire, this is not the space for a private conversation. You invited me as a founding investor. Nicole stared at her. Who are you? Claire approached the front table but did not take the stage. She placed a printed message beside Nicole's program. Ryan told me we had an authentic connection. He said I had mistaken safety for love. Nicole looked at Ryan. You told her the same things. What Claire and I discuss in coaching is confidential. You told me there was nothing personal between you, Claire said. Ryan lifted both hands. Fear is creating a narrative that none of us needs to accept. Mara walked forward carrying her old contract and the business communications her attorney had cleared for disclosure. "No," she said. "The narrative is older than Nicole." Ryan's calm expression finally tightened. "Mara has a history of misrepresenting our work." Mara placed her message beside Claire's. Nicole unlocked her own phone, searched Ryan's name, and opened the paragraph he had sent her. She set the screen beside the two printouts. All three messages used the same sequence. Safety was not love. Guilt belonged to a smaller self. The connection had not been chosen. It had been recognized. "He changes the woman's name," Mara said. "He keeps the paragraph." Ryan turned to me. "You organized this because you cannot tolerate Nicole choosing another life." "I didn't bring these people into your life, Ryan." "You did. You gave them a story." "No, Ryan. This is accounting creating a timeline." Marissa reminded everyone that no court had ruled on the divorce claims. She spoke only because Ryan's attorney had asked investors to rely on the proposed financing. The home equity line had no spousal consent and could not close. Nicole's prior transfers were disputed marital expenditures. True North's ownership filing gave Nicole no equity. The Luma contract was suspended. Those were records, not allegations about anyone's private life. An investor asked Ryan how much capital remained committed. He said funding was being restructured. Another asked whether Nicole's guarantee was still available. Nicole answered before he could, no. A third investor asked how much cash Ryan had invested personally. He answered with the value of his curriculum, brand, and intellectual property. Cash, the investor repeated. Ryan said founder contributions were reflected across several development categories. He did not provide a number. Claire opened her draft agreement. "You told me Nicole's capital had already secured the property." Nicole looked at him. "You told me Claire was not involved." "Investor conversations are fluid until closing," Ryan said. "Our relationship was not supposed to be an investor conversation." For the first time, Ryan did not have therapeutic language ready. He looked toward the screen as though the next slide could restore the room. Ryan took her arm and lowered his voice. "Do not make a fair decision in front of people who do not understand us." She pulled away. Claire placed her draft investment agreement beside Nicole's. Both required the woman to contribute capital and provide guarantees. Neither gave her present ownership. "You offered her the same retreat?" Nicole asked. "They are separate opportunities." "At the same property?" Ryan looked toward his attorney's face on the conference room tablet, but the video meeting had ended. Mara said Ryan had taken $120,000 from her for an earlier retreat that never opened. She did not accuse him of a crime. She showed the settled contract dispute and payment record. Investors began leaving their tables. Ryan stepped away from Nicole and told the event coordinator he needed to handle an urgent legal issue. He walked toward the service corridor without asking whether she was coming. Nicole watched him go. "Ryan," she called. He did not turn around. She followed him as far as the corridor. I could hear only fragments. "You said we would leave together. I need space from this energy." "What about the hotel? The investors? Talk to your attorney." The service door closed behind him. Ryan had spent 4 months teaching Nicole that practical questions represented fear. The moment his own funding failed, practical questions were all he left her. She faced me instead. "You planned all this?" "No, you planned it. I stopped paying for it. You destroyed my career." Simon remained near the stage. "Your husband did not approve the vendor contract," he said. "You did." Nicole looked at the ownership documents, the 2 investment agreements, and 3 versions of the same message. 4 months earlier, she had told me Ryan offered a life without dishonesty. "You said Ryan gave you an authentic life," I said. "Tonight is the first night neither of you can charge it to me." The launch ended without an investment announcement. True North did not disappear that night. Ryan blamed malicious interference. and promised the launch would be rescheduled. It never was. Without Luma's referrals, Nicole's home equity, or new investor money, the company lost the vendors and credibility keeping it alive. Mara pursued her remaining civil rights. Claire withdrew and shared her documents through counsel. Other former clients raised similar claims. Ryan's business failed because the money, referrals and trust he had borrowed from other people stopped arriving. Luma's independent review confirmed that Nicole had hidden the vendor conflict, approved Ryan's company, transferred restricted client information, and submitted unsupported expenses. She was terminated from management after the review concluded, and later found lower-level work outside vendor oversight. Our divorce took 9 months. Priya's final report did not turn every disputed charge into marital waste. Some travel had legitimate business purposes. Some coaching qualified as professional development. The final credit was smaller than $94,000, but it matched what the records could prove. Nicole also assumed the personal debts tied to True North. That did not weaken the result. It made the settlement match the evidence instead of my anger. Nicole retained her retirement account subject to the ordinary marital division. I retained mine under the same rules. Neither of us received a punishment disguised as arithmetic. We sold the house after neither of us could agree on a buyout that made financial sense. The mortgage was paid. Remaining equity was divided under the settlement, and no part of it funded Ryan's retreat. I removed the anniversary letter from its frame while packing my study. I did not tear it. 13 years did not become false because the marriage ended badly. I placed the letter in a box with photographs, travel tickets, and other things that belonged to a life I no longer occupied. Nicole asked to meet after the divorce became final. We sat in a quiet coffee shop where no one knew us. She looked tired but not destroyed. That mattered to me more than I expected. I had wanted consequences, not ruin. She had paid the last hotel balance from the launch herself. Ryan never reimbursed it. Her attorney had recovered none of the $25,000 transfer from True North because the company had spent the funds and carried more debt than assets. The divorce credit was the only practical recovery available to the marriage. Ryan used me, she said. He did. You knew before the launch. I knew he had used the same method before. I did not know what you would believe until you saw it. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have listened? She looked down at her coffee. Probably not. Nicole said Ryan had found her at a time when she felt invisible. He turned every dissatisfaction into evidence that our marriage was suppressing her. He praised the choices that gave him access and called doubt a return to fear. I believed her. Being manipulated does not erase the choices you made while helping him manipulate everyone else, I said. She nodded. Was none of our marriage real to you after that night? 13 years were real. That is why 4 months of lies mattered. She asked whether I could ever forgive her. I said forgiveness and reconciliation were different questions, and I was not ready to promise either. We left separately. I rented an apartment near my office and began learning which routines belonged to me rather than to us. Sunday dinner became something I sometimes shared with friends and sometimes ate alone without treating solitude as failure. Nicole had called our marriage a cage because Ryan taught her to hate the safety she once loved. In the end, I did not destroy her new life. I simply stopped holding it up. Was Daniel right to let Nicole discover the truth at the launch? Or did he owe her one final warning? And after she gave Ryan their money, home equity, and client access, was she still his victim, or had she become his accomplice?